I'm a passionate web developer. So I will be talking about JavaScript build tools. So you would think, okay, what is build tools? And if you are a programmer of any language, you would know before production, you people will build and package it in certain way. For Java applications, you would package as a var file. For JavaScript, what we will do and what tools we have and how do we I will explain about mental model about JavaScript build tools. So there are tons of build tools are there. So it will be confusing for even experienced developers. So I would suggest how to think of it and what and all is available for us. So we'll understand what is the build process for JavaScript, and we'll understand conceptual understand of each step. So in a build process, what and all we do in each step, and then some making sense of build tools. So how they work internally, and what is the common things across the build tools, and what some of the famous or most used build tools, and then we'll talk about some major frameworks which used build tools. So at high level, so in a JavaScript world, you build an application for a maintainability purpose. You build it in code separation. You do a code separation in the different folders. Let's say if you take a e-commerce website as an example, cart related things you will put in one cart folder, and then you do all the files, HTML, CSS. If you have any assets and JavaScript related files, product related one in separate folder. Like that, you will have lot of folders. So in long term, for maintainability purpose, it is good. But if you want to run that and put it in production without build tools or without doing any processing on that one, so you will be serving all those files to the browser at runtime. So let's say user is visiting lot of pages, all the files are taking time to download into the browser and then rendering it. So what build tools does is, we'll take all of those folders, whatever dependencies, libraries you have, and we'll make it, it's based on your approach. You will make it as a single file for each CSS, JavaScript and images, or you will make chunks of code which based on loads based on your requirement. So in home page, you don't need products page. In home page, you need certain banners, and if you take e-commerce as an example, and some recommended 4 or 5 products according to your usage. So that way, some code chunks we can do and load them based on need basis. So I will create, finally it will be a static asset. So these are the steps mostly done today in most of the web applications, even though you might not do directly, but we will be doing this in the build process. So, and build tools help us do this without our intervention. So nowadays build tools are so sophisticated, we don't need to do any manual intervention. So in the minification, I will just explain what are these terms. Minification is just reducing your lines of code, like you will remove all the empty spaces, comments, and document related stuff in the production build. So let's say you have, for a developer friendly purpose, you added the comments for each function, what it does, and you have for code readability purpose, you have lots of tabs and spaces which takes file size, which increases the file size. At build time, we'll remove all of those and make it in a single line. JavaScript works best that way, and its size will become lesser and we can load it faster to the browser. And asset optimization. This is related to images or videos in your website. So what it means is, in certain websites or some developers, what they do is, if you have some images and if you are loading it to browser in a desktop or a laptop, you need high resolution images. But if you are loading it in mobile, you don't need high resolution images, but you can do it with a minimal version of that image, so it loads faster. So those optimizations you can run on your from your build tools. And pre-processing, so writing direct CSS, nowadays people don't like that much. SAS less, they give modular way of writing CSS, reusability wise. So those converting from SAS to CSS will be done by build tools. So browser doesn't understand your SAS format of CSS styling. Linting, it's to keep sanity of your code. So before checking into your repository. So duplication. So for example, you are taking a certain library and using it. For example, Moment.js or Lodash. They have their own dependencies which you are using in your application also. So in your package.json, if you use that library, and even Moment.js production build has that copy, so these two will increase your final build file size. So what duplication in this step, what build tools do is they will remove the double copy of your particular common libraries and make a single copy and use it. So tree shaking, what it does, it analyzes your entire code base and removes dead code and which are not useful. And in a particular library you imported, and there are certain functions you don't need. So those are all will be removed from the final prod builds. And transpilers, this is specific to any flavor of JavaScript if you are using, for example, TypeScript, if you are using our CoffeeScript, transpilers will come into picture to convert it to JavaScript. At the end of the day, everything is JavaScript, HTML, and pure CSS. So compression. So if you have a lot of resources to load and you want it faster, so you can gzip is one of the library, we can use it and compress the files and uncompress in the browser side. So for that you can use, compression is very less used unless you really require it. And polyfills, which serves the purpose of browser incompatibility. So if you are using latest ES6 format and writing some map functions, and which is not available in older Internet Explorer, so you can use polyfills to overcome that problem. And documentation, so this will generate a documentation for a developer or engineering team purpose. So it will not go to production, but it will generate a nice document page for you. So next, whatever build tools I will be taking as example and explaining, that's my opinion, and based on, some of you may agree or some of you may not agree, but overall JavaScript build tools, any build tool can be used for any purpose. You can write your own plugin. So that way, any approach we recommend or discuss will be opinionated. So these are some of the most famous build tools, or task runners, or module bundlers, or tree shakers, anything you can call. These are some of the famous ones. There are a lot of I missed here. So, but these are the major one. Node and NPM are the base for all the build tools. So making sense of build tools. So when you see the list in the previous slide, so there are a lot of them, and which one to use. So let's say you want to install a package, which one to use. There are NPM is there, Yarn is there, Yeoman is there, Bower is there, and they do other things also. So Yeoman does code generation also based on your configuration. Should I use that or should I stick with NPM? Yarn is supposed to be faster than NPM. Should I use that? These doubts you will get. And what are these gulp, webpack, grunt? I see in some projects, I don't see in other projects. So how do we make sense of? So we can say the core dichotomy is just what each build tool does, whether it installs or whether it does some stuff. That stuff can be bundling, tree shaking, or task running, or starting a dev server, all those things. So you can divide those like this, and so majorly NPM, Bower, Yeoman, and Yarn are the install stuff, and Nowadays, you can do other does stuff also in the install stuff. So that way, it's overlap. So what are does stuff means? I had added some examples. You can go through it, replacing a string in a text file. So previously it was not possible when Node.js was not in the picture. At that time everything was served as static, and they were doing using bash script. Some people wrote that, okay, bring all the JavaScript files and make one file and compress it and send it to browser. So that was the like maximum they could do it before Node.js. But after Node.js, you can program and you can build it. So how do you generate those build versions, production versions? So that is up to you. So what is your how much manual task you want to automate? It's up to you. So based on that, you will do editing a file, or you will just build a production version of your application. So all build tools are powered by Node and NPM. So they are like basic building block, and they own it. Anything on top of you install and run it, but finally it comes to Node and NPM. So that's why they are like Thanos, most powerful. So what is a production version? So from the initial time I was talking about, okay, you developed a web application and production version. So what does it mean? So this is one example. So here one index.html example which loads first in the browser, and you can see we have a lot of link, CSS files and lot of scripts which has functionality written. So in before if you don't use any build tools, these all files needs to be loaded. So based on file size and your network speed, it takes a lot of time to render. So what build tools help us achieve is, it makes all of simple build tool which will help us combine all these CSS into one file and compress it, minify it, all those process, and even JavaScript files into one file and load it. So that way our readability, this is auto-generated one. That side index.html is auto-generated one. This side is what we wrote. So it will load faster, and it will be performant in the browser. So some more points are, the lines between install and do can be blurry. So as I said earlier, NPM is used for installation purpose, but NPM now supports scripts. You can write a script in JavaScript and run as part of NPM command line. So that way, so does it really segregated into installers? It's not like that. So it can be used in both ways. So, and there is no right combination of tool. So if you take any tool, Bower and Grunt, if you want to use and build an application, you can do it. NPM, only pure NPM I will use and I will build it, you can do it. Webpack is currently most used build tool. So that way there is no right tool, and all build tools have same goal. So which is to make our life easier and less headache while building. So let's think like you have developed an application and you have to copy all the JavaScript into one file and do it manually. So how much it will be error prone, how many times it will break in the production. So in that way, so build tools will make our life easier, and we can run as many times as possible. So even in development time, you can build production version and test what is the performance, how it is working. So instead of waiting for production build, somebody will from DevOps will come and do and deploy, then I will test it. So we can do in our dev machine. So when you go into build tools, what we say, documentation, or when you try to learn about it, documentation is not always good, because somebody like architect or a tech lead, initial time of the project will decide which build tool to use. He will configure it and he will save it, and we will be using for over a period of time. So build tools are not like everyday task you will be doing and you will be updating. So that's why it's not like you have to learn and do it. Whenever you require that much, you can learn and do it. So it's not like you need to, for example, Webpack, need not be expert in plugins, modules and all, how to configure it. Should I learn how to write a config file, whole config file without looking at documentation and all? It's not required. So most of the tools does automatically, and it's used only in several time. But gulp and grunt, those are task runners that will be useful for developers. So evolution of build tools. So I will be using this slide most of the time in all my talks. There will be Darwin's reference. So NPM is the base. So build tools took off when NPM and Node.js came into picture. So after that, for some time, CodeLit was there, but when Grunt and Bower came, that disappeared. So it's like less used. Repository is there, package is there, but no maintenance wise. So you don't get updates and whatever current trends going on. So later Gulp came, which is better than Grunt, and then Webpack is now currently ruling all the framework. Angular, React, any framework, any web application you take, everybody is using Webpack. So indirectly or directly, you can modify the configuration and build your application. So, but still, Gulp and Grunts are useful. It's up to the developer to how much he wants to use and how much task he wants to automate. So recently, from 2017, 2018, Rollup and Parcel are taking lead in the popular one. So they are better than, it's almost similar to Webpack, but Webpack you need to do a lot of configuration, but these does automatically. So you don't need to do configuration of whatever you need to do for Webpack. So most common build tools, I will take these 4 as example, and I will explain what they do and how their config file looks. So Grunt is a JavaScript task runner. So they defined a standard way of writing configuration file. It's a JSON file. You write it, and when you run it, it will do the task. So, and there are lots of plugins they wrote for all the build process which we discussed earlier, minification, compilation. It will start the unit test, and you can submit code to a repository based on the previous task result. So those things you can configure. It's completely in JSON, and whole Grunt has only config way of doing it. You can't do scripts unless you work in the Grunt code base and update there directly. So performance wise, it's average, and means it's good. So the level of configuration you do, based on that it will perform, and lot of community support is there. Anything you can think of, there is a plugin, so you don't have to write all the plugins or configuration for that. So next is Gulp. The moment Gulp got released, Grunt took a backseat, because what Gulp they made code over configuration. So anything you want to do, you can write a JavaScript program, and then do the same task as Grunt does. But in the Grunt, the learning curve was steep, because you need to understand the JSON schema and make the modifications. But in program, I think you can dynamically update. So it works with Browserify is another build tool which merges all the HTML file and CSS. That bundling it will do, and on top of that, Gulp will run the tasks. So you can write your own task in JavaScript, and you can update your project. So there are tons of plugins here also, and you can take that plugins and modify those. So you don't have to depend on what those plugins support, but you can modify the code and run it in your local. So Webpack is the, what we say, build tools master. So when Webpack came, they told it's a configuration, but you need to do very minimal configuration. You don't have to do like Grunt, which has tons of, for every simple task, Grunt required a lot of configuration. So that way, Webpack said, okay, you need to write some 10 lines of config file and it works out of the box. And Webpack had tree shaking and code splitting. Grunt and Gulp didn't support code splitting out of the box. Webpack brought that one. So you divide your application into chunks and lazy load whenever you require. So that way Webpack made a huge difference and it became very popular, and now also it's currently a most popular build tool which out there. And flexible configuration, it's like Grunt, Webpack works in four, what we say, its mantra is 4 things you need to configure in any Webpack config file. One is entry, one is output, another one is loaders, another one is plugins. These are the 4 things you need to follow in any Webpack config file. Entry is what is your entry point for the application. So index.js or any entry point in your application, you need to mention those. You can mention it as multiple entry points, and it can be an object type or an array type or a simple string. So output also you can specify particular folder and a particular file bundle name, and when you do code chunks, multiple files when you are doing, you can specify each chunk name also. Is a new thing, past 2 years onwards we are using it. And rollup is different from all other thing is, one way is it doesn't use AMD, asynchronous module definition, it doesn't use that one. It will directly analyze your code and load up. What I mean to say is, so any Webpack, it requires import or require CommonJS, which requires your dependence files to be imported in one of the file. So it builds a tree. Any build tool will build a tree from your entry point to all the application, including libraries. So what rollup does is, it doesn't, it works with CommonJS, along with it works directly with ES6. You don't need to do any extra plugins to achieve that. Webpack, you need plugin to achieve that one. So it doesn't understand ES6 directly, import all those modules. And Parcel is a blazing fast. They everywhere, wherever Parcel they are advertising, they say blazing fast, because this is the first build tool which uses parallelism, which uses service workers to do parallel build of your application. So any application, any file it comes across, it caches it and uses for the next build. So that way, first time rollup will, Parcel will be slower, but as you go forward, it will be faster. And it uses multi-core. If your system is multi-core, it uses service workers to faster build process. And then tree shaking. It was not supported earlier. Recently, they added tree shaking feature to Parcel. And StackBlitz is an online editor. They use Parcel, and you can see one. If you are using StackBlitz, you can see how fast it is building. And zero configuration. You don't need to add any config.js file. You go to your application folder and just run Parcel build and what is the name of the file you want, and it figures out your whole application code and all the assets. It makes a AST tree, and finally it builds it. So that way, caching and parallelism brings the speed, and you don't need to do. It's like zero configuration. You don't need to have any config file to achieve that. So this is whatever tools I discussed till now. It is applicable for any JavaScript, any front-end application, or even for Node.js application server side, you can use it to certain level. So it is common for all the applications, whether it's a enterprise big application or it's a small application, your pet project. All build tools are same configuration, same way we'll use. So then whoever uses Angular here, Angular 2 plus. So you guys know what happens inside Angular. So we discussed all these tools. Nowadays we use Angular CLI to build and start the server and all. So under the hood, what Angular is doing. So they announced Webpack they're using for module bundling. But what are the other tasks? We can create a component, we can add component, we can upgrade the packages. All these tasks, Visa, Grunt or Gulp can be used. But what Angular did is they built their own. They built schematics. Anybody heard of it? Angular CLI schematics. Those schematics help us, help Angular team to write a build tool, that CLI tools, so that outsider can configure however they want and it works properly. It's like a JSON schema for Angular CLI. So we'll discuss what happens inside Angular. So Angular CLI has 5 concepts. So workspace, which is your project folder, and schematics is what it defines your Angular structure. So what are the builds, configuration is available, what you need to do, when to run which configuration, all these things will be defined in schematics. And architects is a part of Angular CLI. So it comes under angular.json file. So angular.json file is the one big tower, if you can take as a tower as example, and all these 4 will come under it. So you define everything in angular.json, and what schematics does is it talks to CL core. Core has common functionality, and schematics will link between builders and architects. So what architect is the library built by Angular, where they define, take the schema and whatever configuration you added to angular.json, map it, validate it, and then pass that information to builders so that they can run all the tasks. So any component creation, they have their own Angular schematics. Update, they have their own Angular schematics, which is written in Node.js, but it works they have their own scripts to create those. But only for module bundling they are using Webpack, except that Angular uses all other, they have used their own custom scripts to create that one. So what we can do here in Angular, if you want some task to be run as part of your Angular CLI commands, you can define your own schematics.json file and some scripts to execute that one, and you can bind it to Angular project and it will run as part of that. So earlier what we were doing, we were writing gulp tasks or grunt tasks, which we were calling explicitly gulp run this script on my project. Here it will be linked to your CLI. So you can mention in your schematic that okay, after ng build run this, then you do ng serve, like that. So those things you can mention in the schematics. So I didn't go to React because React everything you need to configure, which is similar to earlier applications. So you can use any tool. What my recommendation is, there is no right tool to do some particular task, or there is no right or performant way. It depends on your application, project size, and how frequently you are running. Based on that you can choose. So if you are starting from scratch, please try Parcel. It looks promising with 0 config. If you are already a project, if you can do some improvements, you can do, but don't try to change it. So it's a tedious job to update the build scripts. Thank you. Any questions?
Let's say I'm using in my project some third-party NPM library. I'm using version 6, and I'm using another third-party library which uses the same library that I have imported earlier. But that time it is using some earlier version, let's say 5 point something. So that time it will do, remove the both version, means one of the version, or it will keep the both version.
So it's up to your task runner what you are doing. So what you are using. Webpack, for example, if you are using Webpack, it will see what is your package.json defined. So if you define same package latest version, it will take that one. So if it breaks while building only, you will see that problem. So if you are not using in your project, and if it is consumed by only third-party library, then it may not do duplication removal. So it really depends on the project structure what you have.
Thanks.
Hi. We have seen that the build tools are evolving, right? So how easy is it to make a transition between them?
So that's why I told. So there is no transition kind of thing. So if you are working in using Grunt or Gulp and it's working for you, and then continue using that. Community is still active. Our Grunt updates are coming a little late, like 6 months gap, but Gulp is still active. People are contributing to it. And if you are in the process of, I know I have to do it, then try parcel. That is my recommendation, because zero config, you just remove your current config files and just run parcel. If it works, great. Otherwise, you need to dig through documents and update to Webpack.
So related question is, so there are no tools to make an automatic transition or?
No,
okay.
no. Because Grunt and Gulp are task runners. So you need to run them explicitly. But Webpack and all, based on your project configuration, like in Angular and all, it runs automatically when you do command line one. So that way it depends. What is your current one? Can we do that transition to next one? But there is no tools to migrate from one tool to another tool. Everything need to be done explicitly.
Hi, you said parcel has parallelism, correct?
Yes.
But we know Node.js is single-threaded. How is this?
Service workers, they.
So it uses service workers.
Yes, internally it launches workers and starts. What parcels approach is, it looks through your whole project structure and sees how many CSS files. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it tries to launch in one core, one worker, and finally it bundles it.
If I want to use this parcel in Angular, so how should I do it? Because Angular comes with Webpack, and am I blocked there? Can I use parcel there?
Yeah, so I didn't try. I'm not sure exactly how to do it. So I can't really answer that question. But just taking a shot at the wind, you just remove your web config in your Angular.json, remove that build part, and see in schematics, is there a way to run my own script? So if that works, it should be. Otherwise, you need to add your own schematic, write a schematic, and inside that schematic call the parcel, and that should work. One way is adding your own schematic. This is just a suggestion to try out. So remove Webpack configuration and just specify parcel and see if it works.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, thank you so much, Punith.
Yeah, thank you.
Please give a round of applause. Yeah.